Ja.
Ist gegangen, auf der Ziege gereicht 4 und ist gefahren zu Jens Rebbe Meilers Jurzeit. Bin ich gegangen mit meinem Bruder, leib mein Vaters Geschäft. Und sagt er, Haska, wenn ja, kann ich mit.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Mir mit meinem Bruder mitgenommen auf der Intelligenz, hat Hans mitgenommen. Ich mit meinem Bruder, mit kleinen Kindern, sind wir rumgelaufen, und er ist gegangen in Neue da, und er ist gegangen mit allen Menschen, dort daten. Und ich bin rumgelaufen als Kind.
Wow. Wow, ein größtes, kannst nicht vergessen.
Nein, das ist eine lange Zeit gewesen. Und da hat der Rebbe sie gekannt. Ich bin vor uns in einem Kajischuhe. Hat mich herangenommen in den ersten. Und er hat gesagt, ich bin gegangen in die Mikve in Natanja. Gegangen daran in die Maschine, in der Car, gegangen an die Menschen mit ihm. Ich habe gestanden draußen und ich ging gesucht, er geht einen Tug zum Rebbe. Hat der Rebbe gesucht, so zu einem Geier raus. Ja, ich komme heran. Und er hat mich herangenommen, noch so was hat er gleich mir und hat gerät mit mir.
Wow, wow. Fisch. Ein größeres Gier hast du gehabt.
Ja.
Wow.
Ich gekannt zusammen mit und ich gekannt zusammen Brüder. Und ich bin schreien von daheim.
Wow. Es gewesen ein Malach. Es gewesen also wie ein Malach, Lahadl. Wow.
Der Mitte hat gelebt, bis die Deutschen gekommen.
Ja.
Bis in 39. Jahr hat sie gelebt. In Akademie der Brüder in der Mitte.
Wow.
Und die Deutschen haben sie gehargert.
Wow. Oh, yeah. Okay. We're going to start. Let's start the Daf today. Hello, everybody. Today's Daf is Daf Dalid, and we're starting Daf Gimel Amid Beis Gufa. I was just discussing here with him because the Gemara said before that Gemara has a dilemma. What is more important, Mikra Megillah or Meis Mitzvah? I thought to myself, I was walking to the street and I see I don't know where I work, there's a lot of homeless people look dead on the street. And it reminds me of the Gemara. The Gemara has a question. If you're going to read the Megillah or you have a Meis Mitzvah, hey Menai Udif, which maybe Mikra Megillah is more important than a Meis Mitzvah.
No, the
Meis Mitzvah is more important. Aber Zeitmen, the Starkheit of the Mikra Megillah, du Zeitmen, as the Gemara hat gehat a Havamina, that the Gemara can even think that Mikra Megillah is more important than Meis Mitzvah, shows you how important Mikra Megillah is. Okay.
Yeah.
We're going to learn today's daf we'll call it Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi's daf. That's because Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi says a lot of things on today's daf. Gufa we learned. Obviously, Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi is an Amoira, lived in the time of Rish Lakish. He was a very wealthy person and a big tzaddik. So Gufa, Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. Krach v'chol hasamuch loy v'chol hanira imoy niden kekrach. Let's say you have a city that's Mukav Chayma. So if it's Mukav Chayma, we just started by Gufa, Beis Gimel Beis. If you have a village that's right next to the Mukav Chaymas, or it can be seen with the Mukav Chayma, it has a din like the city itself. It has a din like a krach. Tanam we learned in a brisa explaining. This doesn't mean a brisa explaining Amora. It's just another way of explaining. Or somebody came and explained what Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi meant. You can have a village that's samuch, that's very close, afal pishein nira, even though it cannot be seen together with the walled city, even if it can't be seen, or nira, or something can be visualized, can be seen from the walled city, afal pishein samuch, even though it's not close. What we're saying over here is that Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi said, imagine you have a walled city. The walled city is supposed to lay on when? The 15th of Adar. If there's a village that's so close to it, even though from the walled city you can't see the village, or this village is close but cannot, it could be seen even if it's far away. So the Gemara says, How could you have a village that can be seen and not so close? Mishkachas law going to Yasru Barosh Har. If the city is on the top of a mountain, and from the city you can see very far, that's considered all part of the Muk of Chaima. But the Gemara doesn't understand. How is it possible to have a village that's close but cannot be seen for the city? Ela Somoch, it's close. And close means it's less than a mile. Afal Pishain and near, but you can't see it. If you're in the walled city, you won't be able to see the village. How's that possible? Rabbi Yirmiyah said, the walled city is on top of a mountain, but right in the valley, deep into a valley, not far away, is a little village. So from the walled city on the mountain, you can't see because it's just too steep. So it's close, but cannot be seen. Thing that Rabbi Shua ben Levi. Rabbi Shua ben Levi said, Krach, let's say you have an unwalled city. A walled city, Sheyoshav, that you built the houses. So a walled city that you built the houses. Ulbsoiv hukaf, and then you put a wall around it. So that was not the common way to build. The first thing is to build the wall and then build the houses. So because you did it in the reverse, Nida Kekfar, it has a din like a village. It has a din like it wouldn't rain on the 15th. It should rain on the 14th, but even it could go even to the 11th, 10th, 12th, 13th. My timer, what's the reason? The Ksiv, it says by Bote Arechaima. The halacha is that if you sell your house in Israel and you're in a walled city, the first year you can actually buy the house back. But if you sold it because you needed the money, so the first year you get a right to buy it back no matter what. But after the first year, you can't buy it back. So the pasuk says, a man, kiyim kar bayis, will sell his house. Moishav, that was developed here in a city that Choyme had a wall around it. So it's mashma that the house was built after the city had a wall around it. Then you have 1 year to redeem that house. But what you see from there, shehukaf ulbsoif yoshav, you need the wall first and then the houses to be built. V'loy sheyoshav, not that you built the houses ulbsoif hukaf, then you put the wall around it. And so in that case, by Huadin, by Megillas Esther, but that a walled city means that first they built the wall in Yeshua ben Nun's time or before, and then they built the houses. But if it was the reverse, it's not considered a walled city. Now, a walled city doesn't need 10 people learning. You don't need 10 batlonim because the fact that it has a wall, that makes it important. But an unwalled city is supposed to really rain on the 14th day, right? But here, if you have an unwalled city, there's no 10 people hanging around the shul. That's what they needed. What makes a big city is that you could have 10 people in Koilo. So if you don't have that, Nidan Kekvar, it's like a village. And therefore, they could even lay on Yud Aleph, Yud Beis, Yud Gimel. What makes a city is having 10 batlonim, 10 people learning in the shul. So the Gemara asked, what's Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi teaching me? He's an Amoira. My Kamashmalon, Tinina, that is a Mishnah. Ezehi Ir what's called a big city? Kol Sheyesh by Asara batlonim. If you have 10 people who could be in the shul at all times. Puchas Makan, if it's less, Hareze Kvar. It's considered a village. And for the Gemara, Krach Istrachalei. That means a city that has a lot of streets. It's like a convention center. People come there to stay there and sell their wares and stuff like that. So there's so many people there, right? And not everybody's working. It's like the Diamond Center. So people come there and they stay there, and then when they're not busy, they go to the shul. So I might think that would make it into a city, because at the end of the day, you have 10 people learning in the shul. They don't live there, but they're still learning in the shul. Kamash Milan, no. It's only if you have a set people that are paid to learn in the shul, that makes it a krach, not if you have temporary people visiting the city and just live and just hanging around the shul. Rabbi Shua ben Levi says, krach shecharav ulb'soif yoshav. You have a walled city that was destroyed, and then in the end, you rebuilt the wall. Nidin kakrach, then it has a din like a walled city because you rebuilt the wall. So Gemara doesn't understand that. My charav, what does it mean it was destroyed? It was destroyed, the walls. Ilema, would you say charvu chaymaisav, that the walls were destroyed? So it means Yashav, if you built it up, the wall again, and then it has a din like a walled city. Lo Yashav, if it was not built up, Loi, it's not considered a walled city. V'hatanya, we learned in a brisa, Rab Lezer bar Yosi oime, Asha loi chayma, loi, it had a chayma, or loi, it means it doesn't have a wall. Afal pisha ein loi, even though the wall that was in the time of Yeshua is not there, ein loi achshav, it's not here now. V'hoya loi kaydem chen, but it had before, like Yerushalayim or something like that. It had a wall somewhere around the city beforehand. So, therefore, actually, you think about it, Yerushalayim had a wall, not the wall that you see now in Yerushalayim. The reason why, if you're, you're in Yerushalayim, but we know Yerushalayim is because it's nearer and samuch to the original Yerushalayim that had a wall. But the original wall around Yerushalayim is gone. So since it had at one time, we know at one time Yerushalayim had a wall from the time of Yeshua ben Nun, it's still good. So what did Rabbi Shua ben Levi mean that if the wall fell down, you need to rebuild it? You don't need to rebuild it. Ella says the Gemara, my charav means shecharav meisar batlonim. An unwalled city. He's talking about an unwalled city that needs 10 people learning. If for some reason they stop supporting the koil and there's no 10 people learning, it has a din like a kvar, like a village. But if you rebuilt it, if you hire a new koil and new 10 batlonim, it comes back to becoming a unwalled city. And therefore, that I might think that you may, if it loses its status and becomes from a city to a village, you can't make it become back into a city. Kamash Malar B'Shuba Levi, that you could make it come back into a city. You're not concerned that you're going to stop with the Asar Batlonim. Vam Rabbi Shua ben Levi. Rabbi Shua ben Levi said, let's go to Dalit Amud Aleph. Lud. There's a place called Lud, right? Near, I don't know, ancient Lud, V'Oinai, in the city of Oinai. V'Geha Charoshem. So Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi took a look at the walls there. He lived there in Lud. That's where he lived. And he looked at the walls and he said a very fascinating thing. He said, these look like new walls in his time, but you should know, there was a wall here at the time of Yeshua ben Nun, and therefore everybody in this Lud and Oinai should now lay on Tesvav Adar. It's a walled city. So the Gemara says, how could it be? Well, Hani Yeshua ben Ninhu. Did Yeshua build those walls in Lloyd and Oinai? V'ha El Pa'al Banu. There's a person in Divrei Yomim called El Pa'al, and he built it. Because the pasuk says, Bnei El Pa'al, Evo Misham B'Shema, Hu Bana Es Oinai Bes Lloyd Ubnei Sehab. This Shamar, which is a son of El Pa'al, whoever he was, he built the wall of Oinai and Lloyd. And so how could you say Yeshua built it? So the Gemara asks back, Ul Tamich, I'll give you another question. And even this pasuk is not good. Asa ban Nunhi. There's a king Yehuda called Asa, and he built it. Now this Lloyd and Oinai was in Shevet Binyamin, but although he was a king of Yehuda, he built up some of the cities that belonged to Binyamin, because the pasuk says, "Vayiven Asa's are Absuras Ashli Yehuda." So you have a couple of questions. Did El Pal build it? Did Asa build it? Yeshua ben Levi said Yeshua ben Nun built the wall. So what's going on with Lud? And why is it considered a Mukufus Chaima? Amar Ablaza explains the whole history. In Lud and Oinai, Hani, these places, Mukafos Chaimim Moish Yeshua ben Nun, have it. At one time, they did have a wall from the time of Yeshua ben Nun. But they got destroyed. Why? By the civil war. We discussed this. There was a civil war between all the 10 tribes, 11 tribes, and against Shevet Binyamin. Bimei Pelegish Begiven. The story of Pelegish Begiva, this Lud and Oinai was a city in Binyamin. They ransacked and destroyed the wall there. V'asa El Pal Bananhi. And El Pal came and built it. Had the input, it fell. So apparently it fell again because probably an engineering malfunction. So it fell. Asa Shaptsinu, Asa came and refortified and did it correctly. The economy, the pasuk says, Vayemil Yehuda, Asa said, let to his people, Nivnes ha'armel, let's build this city. So Michlal, the Arm Havim Ikar, they were real cities. They had a wall. It just fell down. Shema Mina. So that was the chiddush of Yeshua ben Levi, that Lloyd and Oinai have a din like a walled city. No Gemara. Yomer Rabbi Shua ben Levi. Rabbi Shua ben Levi said, Noshim chayaves b'mikra Megillah. Noshim are obligated in the reading of the Megillah. So what's the reason? I would think that a Megillah is a mitzvah asay shezman grama, and Noshim should be potter from that. So Rabbi Shua ben Levi says, no, she'af hein hoya ba'yusei. Since the Gzeras Haman was against them as well, Haman wanted to destroy Lahashim and Lahareg and Noshim and Noshim Etaf, everybody. So Noshim were in the story, so they're obligated in the Mikra Megillah. Rashbam explains that the whole nace happened because of a woman. It became because of Esther. Now, there's one important point of this thing that Noshim are chayiv to read the Megillah. That from this Gemara, if you look at it straight, you would think that a woman has the same obligation as a man, and therefore in shul, if there's no man that could lane, you could have a woman lane the Megillah for the men. But that's not true. Tosfos divides the mitzvah of Mikra Megillah into two parts, and he says that a woman has the mitzvah is just to listen to the Megillah, not to say the Megillah, and a man has an additional obligation to listen, and he has to almost verbalize it, but his listening is like verbalizing it. And therefore, since a woman has less of a chiyuv, less of an obligation, therefore a woman cannot be moitzi a man. She cannot be the leader reading the Megillah even though she's obligated, but not on the same level as a man. And to explain that, how do you divide that? Listening and reading is that part of the Megillah is like a Hallel, and therefore it's like you're supposed to say Hallel on any celebration. Hanukkah, we say Hallel. Purim, the Hallel is the Megillah. A woman does not have the obligation to read Hallel, and therefore a woman on Purim has less of a mitzvah regarding the Megillah than a man. A woman, again, has to just listen to the Megillah. She doesn't have to have the Megillah. She's not obligated to read the Megillah. A man has to listen and read. Although by listening, it's as if he's reading, but it's a double obligation of listening about the nace and also saying thank you and saying a hallel, a praise to God. Rabbi Shua ben Levi, another thing Rabbi Shua ben Levi said, Purim shcholias b'Shabbos, Purim that fell out on Shabbos, sha'alim v'dorshin b'inyanei shel yoyim. You have to learn, let's say Purim that falls out on Shabbos, so you're not reading the Megillah. The speech, the rabbi's speech has to be in regarding Purim. He should darshan the psukim of the Megillah as a zecher that really you're supposed to read the Megillah on Shabbos. So the Gemara says, "My area Purim." Just because Purim, why is it Purim that you're supposed to discuss about Purim on the day of Purim? I feel a Yom Tov Nami. Every Yom Tov, on the Yom Tov, you're supposed to talk about the topics of the day on Yom Tov. The Tanya we learned in the Brisa. It's not a minhag. Moshe tiken lehem liyisrael. Moshe Rabbeinu gave a rule, set up a rule for the Jewish people on Yom Tov. Sheyihalan sha'alim v'darshan binyanei sheyayim. You should ask the Chacham, and he should give speeches regarding what's the inyan of the day, something about the hashkafa of the day that you're at. Hilchas Pesach b'Pesach, Hilchas Atzeres b'Atzeres, Hilchas Chag b'Chag, Pesach, Shavuos, and Sukkos. On Pesach, the speech has to be about Pesach. On Shavuos, it should be about Shavuos. On Sukkos, it should be on Sukkos. So why should Rabbi Shua ben Levi come along and tell you that the rabbi's speech on Shabbos, Purim, has to talk about the Megillah? So, and for the Gemara, Purim itztechilei. Purim, I would think that he should not talk about Purim that Shabbos. Why? I might think that if he would talk about Purim, talk about the Megillah, people will come to say, hey, let's read the Megillah. We're learning about the Megillah. We're teaching the Megillah, and we're telling over the story of the Megillah. Let's bring a Megillah. And it'll come that people will carry a Megillah to the shul. And therefore, it's a Gzeira Mishum Rabbah. That's the whole reason why you don't read the Megillah on Shabbos. Kamash Malam, that's a stretch. And even the rabbi's speech can be on Purim that falls out on Shabbos, should be about the Inyanei Shel Yoyim. Zog the Gemara, Rabbi Shua ben Levi. Another thing Rabbi Shua ben Levi said, Chayev Odom Likrais Megillah B'Layla L'Shnoisa B'Yoyim. A person's obligated to read the Megillah at night, and Pashtis, what the Gemara is going to think is you read the Megillah at night, and you should learn the Mishnayos of Megillah during the day, right? That's what you learn, the Mishnayos. Read the Megillah at night, and then we learn the Mishnayos during the day. That means if you're Ama Aretz, yes, maybe you should read the Megillah even the daytime. But if you're a Talmud, because the Mishnayos say so. But a Talmud Chacham has to read the Mishnayos Megillah during the day. Why? Because Shnema, the pasuk says, "Elakai ekri yoimim v'loisana." By to Eibishta, I call out during the day and you didn't answer. V'layla at night, I also not going to be quiet. V'loy dumiyali, I'm not quiet about it. This kapitel Chav Beis Ayela Sashachar talks about Megillas Esther. Esther wrote that kapitel tefillin. So we see that there's an obligation to do something at night and do something today. So Rabbi Shua ben Levi said, you have to read the Megillah at night. V'lishnoisa bayom. So lishnoisa, what is lishnoisa bayom? During the daytime, you're supposed to do something. So Sava Minei, people who were listening to Rabbi Shua ben Levi thought that this is what he meant. Limikroy balayla, you read the Megillah at night, ulamisna masnisen dita beyamama, and read the Mishnayos during the daytime, because that's what lishnoisa means. No, even nobody should read the Mishnayos during the daytime. During the daytime, you also, in fact, the bigger obligation is to read the Megillah during the daytime. Amalahu Rabbi Yirmiyah, lididi miparshalei mimei Rabbi Chia bar Abba. Rabbi Chia bar Abba explained to me what Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi meant, and that is going to Amri Inshi. People say, Avor Parashasa, I'm going to go over the Parsha, this Parsha, the Parsha of the week, the Isnoinia, and I'm going to repeat it again. So the Lishnoisa means that's what Rabbi Shua ben Levi says. You have to read the Megillah during the night and have it repeated during the daytime. So why did he say it in this language? Because he wanted to tell you that you're you're learning it at night so that you can prepare, that you can do a better laning during the daytime, because the daytime is a much more important chiyuv than the nighttime. The nighttime is midrabanan. During the daytime, it's medivrei Kabbalah from the Navi. So that's why he expressed himself in such a way. But people made a mistake, and people didn't understand. They said Lishnoisa, you should learn the Mishnayos. No, the Lishnoisa means you repeat it so that you're well versed in it by yom during the daytime. And we learned this before, because we learned this. We spoke it out that the kfarim, those villagers, sometimes because they laned early. So they only lane during the daytime early. They never even laned the Megillah at nighttime. So there's a leniency for them, because it was not as strong as an obligation. Itmenami Omar Abchelba Omar Ula Bira. Abchelba said in the name of Ula Bira the same thing. Chayav Odom L'Kroises Megillah Balayla L'Shnoisa B'Yoyim. You have to repeat it during the day. Shnema, the pasuk says. And this Mizmor Shichanikas Habayis LeDavid is also talking about Mordechai Esther and Haman. And it's darshan that way. It's not so clear from that. But the pasuk ends off, Laman Yizar Mercha Chavay. Chavay means my neshama will sing to you during the daytime. V'lo yidaim, it's not going to be silent even at night. Hashem Elekai, Hashem, my personal God, La'olam Oidaka, I will always give you thanks. So that is a remez, since this is a remez that there's twice that you're supposed to read Megillah. Once during at night and the next time during the day. Just a point that the word chavod is usually a reference to your neshama. Another name for your neshama is called kavod, because that's the ultimate self-respect of a person and self-esteem of a person, is if he connects with his neshama. And then he realized how respectful he is and how timeless and eternal a person is. Anyway, the Mishnah said, we had in the Mishnah, the Mishnah said that Kfarim have this leniency to lane earlier. Now, why did they make this leniency if you live out in the village? Amar Abchanina, Chachamim hekelu ala Kfarim. Chachamim were lenient on the villagers. Because they will come again during the Purim day. They lend the Megillah, and they will prepare fresh food for their brothers in the cities. That's what we think this is what it means, that they're coming back. And therefore, they're coming back. So because they're busy in the kitchen preparing food for everybody in the big cities, so they have this leniency to lane early. It's like the waiters minion in camp. They daven early so they can help the people set up the dining room. So the Gemara says, remember, we go to Gimel Dalet Amud Beis. Remember the Takanta the Kraken Hava. Would you say that the whole purpose was to benefit the big cities, to have these villagers come in and prepare fresh food? But now we learned in the Mishnah, Cholius B'Sheni. If it actually Purim came out on a Monday, Kfarim by Yars Kedoros, Karim by Yom. the villagers would actually read together with the big city on that day, on Monday. If it's true what you're saying, then they're not going to be preparing fresh food that day because they're reading it at the same time. If it fell out on Monday, they should go back to, have read the Megillah on the previous Thursday. So the Gemara says the reason why the Mishnah doesn't say that, because Habilei Asara, it's the 10th day, Asara like Tekina Rabbanon. And on the 10th day, the Rabbanon did not, because that Thursday is the 10th day of Adar, and there was no remez in the Megillah that you could read it that early. So the Gemara says, Tashma, come in here. If Purim comes out on Thursday, the villagers would read on the same Thursday. So if they're reading it on the same day of Thursday, that means they're not preparing fresh food. If it's true what you're saying, they should go back to Monday and read it, because Monday is the 11th day of Adar, and therefore they'll be able to be freed up on the actual day of Purim to prepare fresh food, come back into the city and start selling fresh food. So the Gemara says, we don't go from Thursday back to Monday, because since if it came out on Monday, you don't go back to Thursday. They made like a gezerah. You should probably, if it came out on Thursday, technically they could have read it on Monday, but we don't go back to Monday. So the Gemara doesn't really stay with this. Tosh Shema, come in here. Amar Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda said, Amasai, when do the villagers have a leniency? A type of village that has bus service that goes into the big city on Monday and Thursday, because they go in for court systems or whatever they go in for. If they have their own court or they don't bother to come in Monday and Thursday, the villagers the villagers only have the right, they could only read it on Yudalid. If the whole point of making a villager be able to read the Megillah early is to benefit the big cities, so it doesn't matter what type of village. Every village, even if it's a village that doesn't come into the big city Monday and Thursday, they should read it earlier so they can come to the village come to the big city on Purim and sell fresh food. Because they don't come in Monday and Thursday, should the big cities lose out? It doesn't make sense. So the Gemara says, no, we read the whole thing wrong. The reason why a villager has this leniency is because he's living out there in the boondocks. As we explained, nobody wants to live in Postville, Iowa, and being a mashkiach and a shoichet out there with nobody. So because it's hard to live there, you'd rather live in the big city, but people need kosher food, so they're living out there. So that's the reason why, because they live out there and they come in once in a while, Chazal made a leniency that they don't have to come in again to the big city on Purim Day. And probably they had nobody to read the Megillah for them. Because they're coming back to provide fresh food. You say mipnei, because all year, because all year they're providing good food for the people in the big cities. That's why they have this leniency. The Mishnah said, if you're a villager, if it fell out on a Monday, they read it on that day. So again, the Mishnah asks just a language, a format question in the Mishnah. Mishnah starts off and says, Megillah Nikres, Yud Aleph, Yud Beis, Yud Gimel, right? Yud Dalet. And then the Mishnah continues and says, if it falls out on a Monday, then the Kfar Vayaris Gedolos would read that day. But if it falls out on Tuesday, then the Kfarim would read the day before, Yud Gimel, and then Yud Beis, and then it goes Wednesday. If the kid fell out on Wednesday, the Kfarim would read Yud Beis. So it comes out, the Mishnah starts off Yud Aleph, Yud Beis, Yud Gimel, and then when it lists the possibilities, it goes in the reversed order. Yud Gimel, Yud Beis, Yud Beis, Yud Aleph. So the Gemara says, why in the Sefer it goes in the order of the month? It goes Yud Aleph of the month, Yud Beis of the month, Yud Gimel of the month. And then when we list out Maishna Sefer, in the end of the Mishnah, when it starts listing the example, Din Kat Sidur Diyayme, it goes in the order of Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, but by doing that, you're reversing the days. You're reversing the days in your examples. Your first example is Yud Gimel Adar, an early day. Your second example is a Yud Beis Adar. And your third example is Yud Aleph Adar. So your examples are going in the reverse order that you started with. So the Gemara says, I do the mishapchelei naketz do the yomim, because that's the way they memorized the Mishnah. Mishnah or Mishnayos were all in the head. So it's easy to remember Yud Aleph, Yud Beis, Gimel, and then to remember Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday as the examples, even though by giving those examples, the inference of that example is the reverse, that you're counting Yud Gimel, Yud Beis, Yud Aleph, but that's in order to format the Mishnah so it can be remembered better and not make any mistakes. That's why it's set up this way. Next part. Chol liyos be'eresh b'Shabbos. Let's say if the 14th day of Adar fell out on Friday, what did the Mishnah say? The Mishnah said that the Kfarim would read on a Thursday, Iyarim, the cities would read on the cities, and the Mukaf Chaima, actually the walled cities, would not read it on Shabbos, because Shabbos you're not allowed to read the Megillah. So they would move themselves back to Friday. Masnisa Mani, who's our author of our Mishnah? Rabbi Yossi. It could be either Rabbi or Rabbi Yossi. So the Gemara says, my Rabbi. Who is this Rabbi? The Tanya we learned in the Brisa. Cholias Be'er Shabbos. If Yudalit Adar fell out on Friday, Kfarim Bayars Gedolos, Makdimin Liyom Maknisa. The Kfarim and the big cities, they go back to the day before, the day of Thursday. You see, even the big cities technically could read it on Friday, but they're shifting it back to the Thursday before. And the Mukafim would read on Friday, because this Tanakama wants that always in a typical Purim, the cities should always read the day before the walled cities. But it didn't have to be that way. Rebbe says exactly what our Mishnah says. Oy marni, I say, lo yidachi ayaris mimkaima. You don't push the cities away. Elo elu ve'elu, the unwalled cities. And the walled cities, Karim Baybayam would read on a Friday. So the Gemara says, my Tama the Tanakama. What's the reason of Tanakama that the unwalled cities should be reading a day before the walled cities, and they have to be pushed away from Friday, even though technically they could read on Friday? They should move themselves back to Thursday. The Ksiv, it says in the pasuk, B'chol shana v'shana, that the Purim should have the uniform each year. It should be the same each year. My kol shana v'shana yaris kaidmus l'mukafim. Just like in each year, a city, an unwalled city, reads the day before a walled city. Afkan ayarais kaidmus l'mukafim. So also this year we're going to move the unwalled cities to read on Thursdays so that they can be read the day before the walled city is going to be read. So the Gemara says, if that's the case, I can darshan that what the Megillah says each year should be the same. Each year, if it's not Shabbos, a regular unwalled city would read in its place. It wouldn't move. So also over here, you shouldn't move an unwalled city from its place. It should read on Friday. So the Tanakama holds, it's impossible. I need to balance out two different things. Should a Yaris not move, and that would make it uniform, or I should make it a Yaris move to Thursday, so it's like every year where the one-walled cities read the day before the walled cities, and I'd rather do that. The Rebbe, my time, a Rebbe has the opposite view, and that's the review of our Mishnah. Every year, a walled city, if it doesn't have to, it reads on the 14th day of Adar. So the Gemara says, but if you do that, why don't you say that each year, a Yaris, unwalled cities, read the day before a Mukaf, before a walled city? You could darshan it that way. Shana hacha the lo yafshe. It's impossible. And so I have to give precedence to one rule. And the rule that Rebbe gives precedence is that a Yaris, if an unwalled city, if they don't have to move, they should read it on Yudalit Adar. So let's just see so far. We have there's one opinion over here. The Tanakama of Rebbe, which is right over here, just so that you have it straight. If this is the Tanakama Rises, if the 14th day of Adar falls out on Friday, so I have this on the sheet. So the Tanakama of the first Brisa holds, a Yaris Gedolos, that means unwalled cities, read it on the 13th, And Mukafas Chaima would read on the 14th, because the main point is that the Iyare should read the day before Mukafet. And Rebbe holds that no, Yaris and Mukafas Chaima would read on Yudalit. They read on the same day. They would all read on the Friday, because the main thing is that Yaris stay in their spot and don't move. Now, where do you see Rabbi Yossi? My Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yossi is in a different brisa, and the Tanakam of that brisa has another opinion, a third opinion. The Tanya we learned in a brisa. You see, Rabbi Yossi is going to agree with Rebbe, but the Tanakama of that opinion will say something different. Tanya, we learned in a brisa, Chol liyos b'erev Shabbos. If the Yudalid Adar fell out on Friday, so therefore the 15th is on Shabbos. Mukafim, the walled cities, actually will read before the unwalled cities. Mukafim ukfarim, the Mukafim and the villagers, Makdim and the Yom HaKnisa, they'll go back to Thursday. By Yaris Gedolos and the unwalled city, Karim Babiyim, will read that day. So it comes out that the walled cities will actually read a day before the unwalled cities. Rabbi Yossi says, no, nothing gets precedented. The Yaris don't move. The Mukafis, instead of reading on Shabbos, will read on Friday. Exactly what our Mishnah says, exactly what Rebbe says. The Gemara asks these questions. My time at the Tanakama, what's the reason of the Tanakama? Except it says it's possible every year is the same. My Chol Shana Shana Yaris Barbaso is Manish Zeh, just like every year. The Yaris read on the 14th, but the Mukafis have to read on a different day. So Afghan, this year also, when it falls out on Friday, Yaris Barbasa, the unwalled cities will read on the 14th. And Mukafis won't read it on Shabbos, but they'll have a different time. They read it not on the same day, they'll read it on the 13th, which is the day before. So the walled cities will go back to Thursday. So the Gemara says, but every year, the walled cities never read before the unwalled cities, and this year you want to make it different. So I have no way out of this question. It's more important that they should read on separate days. That's why I moved the Mukafes to read on Thursday, the day before the Yaris. My time with the Rabbi Yossi, it's exactly the same thing. My Kol Shana ain't Mukafim kaim le Yaris. Afkan ain't Mukafim kaim le Yaris. The aim of Kol Shana Shana, my Kol Shana Manzeh Loish Manzeh, Afkan's Manish Zeh Loish Manzeh, Shana Hakad Loy Efsha. This is the repeat of what Rebbe said. That the main point is that I will not move a Yaris if I don't have to. And if it comes out on Friday, so an unwalled city, New York City, any unwalled city would read on that Friday. The walled city will move to Friday as well. Every year, an unwalled city reads the day before a walled city. That's when it's possible. When it's since it's not possible, I give precedence that you don't move a Yaris. They should stick to Yudalat Adar. Now, one last point, two more points. The Saba Rebbe holds a Yaris loy dachin and liyom haknisa. Would Rebbe hold that you never move a Yaris? That means you never remove a city to a Thursday. For Tanya, we learned in the Brisa, Cholias b'Shabbos. Let's say Purim comes out on Shabbos. Kfarim makdim eliyom haknisa. The villagers will go actually to Thursday. Vayaris gedolos karim ber Shabbos, and an unwalled city would read on Friday. Umukafas chayma l'machar, and of course the mukafas chayma could read on the 15th, which is on a Sunday. Rebbe says Oymarni. Rebbe likes to use the word I think, but it's a way of his expressing his humility. Since you're pushing an unwalled city, they can't read it on Shabbos. They should go back to Thursday. So the Rebbe doesn't so agree with our Mishnah in this case when it falls out on Shabbos. So what do you see there? That Rebbe has no problem moving unwalled cities, and you're telling me that Rebbe hates moving an unwalled city. So the Gemara says that how could you make that question? Hachi hasha hasam over there zman and Shabbasi. Over there, when I'm moving an unwalled city, because the Purim came out on Shabbos, so you have to move it. Since you're moving it, they should be moved to the Thursday. They should be moved to the Yom HaKnisa. Over here, in the case where Rebbe doesn't want to move it, is because it came out on Friday. Zman Erev Shabbos. It came out on Friday, so I have no technical reason to move it, except that you want it to always be before Mukafim. That I don't say. If it's not possible, it's not possible. But don't move Yaris if you don't have to. Unwalled cities, you shouldn't move it. And one more point. Come on, also Purim Shcholias b'Shabbos Hakol Nitcha in the Yom HaKnisa. If Purim falls out on Shabbos, you go back to the Yom HaKnisa. everything is on Thursday. What do you mean everything is on Thursday? If Purim falls out on Shabbos, the Mukafin could still read it on Sunday because that's the 15th. Mukafin could even do it on Sunday. Elo, what we mean to say is Kol Hanitcha Yidachal Yom HaKnisa. Everything gets pushed off. They should all be on the Thursday. Nobody should read it on Friday. They should all read it on Thursday. Come on, who is this Rab Chelboy aligning himself to? Karebi like Rebbe. One more line or two, which will sum up the whole thing. What we did see over here, that when Purim falls out on Shabbos, you don't lay in the Megillah. The Kuli Alma Mio Megillah b'Shabbos loy Karinim. So the Gemara is going to say something very amazing. So first the Gemara says, my time, why can't they read the Megillah on Shabbos? Rabbah said, and this is why it's called Gezerah de Rabbah, Hakol Chayavim Kriyas Megillah. Everybody has to read the Megillah. Not everybody knows how to read the Megillah. So it's a Gezerah. We have a rule. We have a concern. A man who doesn't know how to read will take it in his hand. He'll go to somebody who will teach him how to read the Megillah on Shabbos. So they said, stop reading the Megillah on Shabbos, because if he does something like that, he's going to carry it 4 Amos and Rosh Hashanah and be Mechal Shabbos. So since it could lead to Chilul Shabbos, they said no Mikra Megillah on if Mikra Megillah on Purim, we don't read it on Shabbos. If Rosh Hashanah falls out on Shabbos, we don't read Shofar, a Gezerah, but it may come to go to carry a Shofar in the street. To learn how to blow shofar. By the time of the lulav, you're going to go to somebody to teach you how to make the brachas and shake the lulav. Therefore, if Sukkot comes out on Shabbos, Chacham said, don't take the lulav or don't take the shofar if it came out on Rosh Hashanah. Now, here's the point. According to this reason, it's a Gzeir D'Rabbanan. So in the Beis HaMikdash, listen closely, in the Beis HaMikdash, they would read the Megillah if Purim came out on Shabbos, because in the Beis HaMikdash, there's no, all Gzeiros D'Rabbanan are suspended. But Rav Yosef comes along and says a stronger reason why, if Purim falls out on Shabbos, we don't read the Megillah. Because a fascinating thing, poor people depend that people are going to give them charity, matanis lev yonim, the day that you're going to read Megillah. The day that you read the Megillah, you're inspired, and you give the poor people. So if they read the Megillah on Shabbos, then poor people, you're not going to be able to bring food to poor people because you'll be carrying on Shabbos, and therefore nobody is good. People, if you can tell people, oh, I'll write the check after Shabbos, so maybe I'll bring it to them before Shabbos, people forget. So therefore, Chazal always wanted that the day that you read the Megillah has to be the day that you're able to carry a gift to the poor person. And therefore, even in the Beis HaMikdash, they wouldn't read the Megillah if it came out on Shabbos, because there it's a legitimate reason. Tanya Nami Hachi, it's not a gezerah. And here's the point: even though the villagers would read the Megillah extra early, that day that they read it, let's say they read it Yud Aleph, they would actually be required, those villagers, to collect from them about Tanis Lev Yonim and to give it out to the poor people, because although they're reading it earlier, they have their obligation of matanis lev yainim on that day. Afal pisha amru adarab mishunda amru. And so the Gemara doesn't sense, even though it said the Brisa has a long language here. Ella, this is how you explain the Brisa. Hoil v'amru shakfar makdim b'yom knisa goyvim by b'yom mechalkam by b'yom neisheneim shalni nesuis b'mikra megillah. Because the poor people are depending on that. Therefore, even though they're reading it early, they're supposed to give the matanis lev yainim early. Aval, but one line further. Simcha ein nehegas ela bizmano. The Sudas Purim has to be on the Sudas Purim on Boi B'Yom. So even though they read it early, they read the Sudas Purim. And like I said, that's Purim Meshulash that you have in Israel. When Tesvav, the 15th day of Adar, comes out on Shabbos. So in Jerusalem, you read the Megillah on Friday. On Shabbos, you say Al Anisim, and you read the Parsha of Vayavay Amalek. And on Sunday, you have the Sudas Purim. So you have the Sudas Purim, which will be like the Mizmana pushed off. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
Thank you.
Agite Nacht, everybody.
Good Shabbos. Good
Shabbos.
Shabbos.
Agite Nacht.
Shabbos.
Shabbos.